times you got to have the play a couple of notes on that guitar behind you for us.
Yeah, do a little intro worship music. Hey everybody, this is Bill, weekly discipleship call. I wanted to invite you all. You know, you guys can invite your friends to this thing. It's not necessarily a private thing. So if you want to start inviting people to billybert.com/disciple or to our new webpage, which is the Google Plus Hangout. I actually got a new name for it. It's Radical Disciples Love, I think, plus.google. So hi Estelle, hi Ron, good to see you guys.
Hi.
We are ready to start. Those of you who want to come in, I put the link in the page if you want to come in for Q&A afterwards, or you just have personal testimony after. That's great. I want to talk to you about addiction, and it's an interesting topic nowadays because, you know, our world is becoming more and more addicted. You know, some of them are very obvious, some of them aren't so obvious. You know, addicted to pleasure, addicted to ease, addicted to television, addicted to drugs, addicted to pornography. I mean, it's just, it's enormous, and it's in the news all the time. I mean, you hear about pastors, you hear about Christian leaders that are addicted to these things. And so I want to talk to you guys about addiction and just our attitude toward it for us and our attitude toward others who are addicted. You know, it's very important to. So let's start off on the. Before we go over to the biblical side, I want to talk to you about the science side, because it's pretty important to understand that science and religion, if it's true science, actually they complement each other. There's no reason to be afraid of science. There's no reason for scientists to be afraid of religion, because both of them, in discovering the truth, you'll come to the same conclusion. You'll actually find out that the things that we're finding in science today were in scriptures for 6,000 years. So let's talk about this thing called addiction and chemical hooks. You know, there's been a philosophy since the early 1900s that chemical hooks is what causes an addiction. You know, that you take heroin and there's a chemical hook in there, and if you take it you take it long enough, that you're going to become addicted. And we find out that most of what we understand about chemical addiction, even though it's propagated continually by our government and by the media and by most addictive solutions, anti-addiction solutions, it's not really true. Because here's the case. I'm going to give you a couple cases. I'm not going to go into it in depth. But studying human behavior and studying human addiction and studying freedom, it's really important to know, how do you know that? You know, that question, how do you know that that's the case? Just because everybody's saying it. Also, when a medical society who's based on the income of you being addicted is telling you what it takes to be free from addiction, you should probably question their motivation. You know, there's a lot of good people in that profession, but at the same time, if the profession itself is teaching you this is the solution, and there's less and less people becoming healed, less and less people actually finding true deliverance from freedom. If you go through an anti-alcoholic program, and one of the very first things that they tell you is that you're going to be an alcoholic for the rest of your life, that's not really true freedom. That's not really a good answer. Before I go into addiction, I want to talk to you about that same community, you know, the mental health community. Back in the early 1900s, there was an 85% success rate in someone coming out of schizophrenia. I mean, extreme schizophrenia and emotional problems. There have been an 85% recovery rate historically. These numbers I'm not making up. I mean, this is historical fact. You can actually find out that back in the 1900s and 1920s, and it's not until medicine, modern day medicine, got involved and started medicating people that we realized that we have less than a 2% recovery rate now. That what helped and healed people was the re-embracement of family and love and community of safety. When we medicate their symptoms and we medicate the problem, they never redeem their problems. And so we find out that there's no real solution for them. So if you're suffering addiction, or if you know somebody who is, or you know a community that's trying to approach people, I'm going to give you some keys to getting free, because this is all about freedom. Back in the early 1900s, there were a lot of experiments on animals. And one of the ones that established some of the rules that we currently use is that the rat and the monkey. The rat was given a cage, and he was put in clean water on one side, and he was given heroin water on the other side. And in almost 100% of the cases, the rat would continue to drink the poison water until they overdosed. They would continue to medicate themselves, and so that became the establishment that there was that there were hooks in heroin, that there was something in the drug that caused you to become addictive. Well, if that was the only experiment, and you start basing your premise on that one scenario, not realizing where the addiction really came from, you would think that that would be a good premise. The same way with the monkey in the cage. The monkey had food and water on one side of the cage, and he had a button on the other side of the cage, and the button was hardwired into their brain. So every time they pushed it, it gave all the pleasure sensors a shock, and they had the ultimate pleasure in their brain. And the monkey would all die of starvation. All of them would die of starvation because they kept pushing the button and they wouldn't go over to the other side of the room. Well, that was if that was the, like I said, if that was the only experiment, that would be that would be enough. But it shouldn't have been enough, because we've actually based many of our psychologies, which is, you know, if someone's addicted, they're always going to be addicted. And what we've done in society is we separate or segregate people who are in addiction. You see it on the addiction TV shows. You see it in the culture, that a person is evil, that they're bad. You put them in prison. They get a prison record. They come out. They actually never get free from their addiction, because it's the segregation that causes the enhancement or the continuation of their addiction. Because this is what happens. There was this guy, Professor Bruce Alexander. He actually did an experiment back in the 1970s that disproved the results from the early experiments. And what he did was he took a rat, same scenario, rat in the cage, and he put him in what we would consider rat heaven. Rat heaven had lots of other rats, so he could have all the sex that he wanted. He had all kinds of food. He could have all the food that he wanted. He could play around. There was a playground over there. There were toys, and there were puzzles, and there was things for him to do and keep him happy. And there were two bottles of water. One bottle of water had heroin in it, and one bottle of water had clean water in it. None of the rats overdosed. And what they proved by that experiment is, if you isolate a monkey or a rat or a human being and you give him no pleasure, he will take pleasure or recluse. He will become a recluse in his brain, his mind, and his heart, and he will go after the things that addict him. And when you put him in a society that loves him, and he has fun, and he's embracing, and he's enjoying his life, and we love the addict instead of shunning him, that we embrace him and we tell him it's going to be okay, and we continue to encourage him, what happens is many of the addicts say, you know, I don't want to drink the drug water because it fogs my human encounter. It fogs my human engagement. I'd much rather have love and human engagement and be present in joy and happiness and love. And so what does the gospel tell us? The gospel tells us that God so loved the world that he continued to give, he continues to give, he continues to give, so that you'll be free. That the objective of the Creator is to love you till you're free. Not to shun you because you make a mistake. That yes, his goal is righteousness, and yes, his goal is freedom, and yes, there are righteous requirements, but he continues to love you so that you will be free. He knows the psychology of a human being. That the only way for us to be truly free is to give you enough love and resource and relationships and vision and goals and aspirations, and you will find freedom. And so the gospel allows you to be free from your guilt, free from your sin, so that you can embrace the Creator, hear his voice, have love and relationships with other people in the kingdom. And that will encourage you to continue to walk the path of freedom. And so this gospel, when we see a bunch of Baptists standing on the street corners screaming and yelling, we hate fags, we hate sinners, we hate you dirty dogs, and everybody's a dirty dog, then what happens is you're doing the very opposite of what the gospel is supposed to do. We're supposed to love people under all circumstances, under all conditions, no matter what they're struggling with. We love them, we embrace them, we pull them into community so that their heart and their mind wants to be free. They don't want to do the drugs anymore. They don't want to do that. They want the culture. They want the relationship. They want the love that you give them. And so the gospel is not just words and regulations and rules, which, yes, there's absolutely rules. I mean, if you want certain things from the Father, there are certain righteous requirements. But it's not. He's not going to cut off his friendship, his fellowship, and the things that are going to get you free. And so one of the things that we see, we actually had a country that studied this. The country of Portugal was so addicted that the percentage of people that were addicted to heroin was so enormous that it took government by storm. And the government says, well, let's try something radical. Let's try and do something that's different than what the rest of the world's doing, because it's not working. Addiction is increasing in prison and in inner cities and in all places in the world. Let's try a radical decision. Let's look at this study and says that if it's love and it's embrace and it's opportunity that sets people free, let's make all drugs, from marijuana to crack cocaine, completely legal, and let's not make it a crime. So we're not taking people and throwing them in prison and putting them around other drug addicts and other troublemakers. And if anybody struggles with it, instead of the money that we spent to imprison and to segregate all of these human beings, we continue to give them support, we give them love, we give them training, we give them a job, We actually supplement them going back to their career, going back to having vision. And what they found out, in just a few years, their drug addiction went to half. They cut out half of all drug abuse. Instead of it growing by 1 or 2 points a year, it cut it in half with just that one single move. And yes, there's a lot more to it. I'm not trying to simplify the drug addiction scenario. People who've ever been addicted like I have, you realize that in some places it needs a little bit more counsel. There's some things that you have to address. There's some things in the psychology of human beings that sometimes you have to address and heal and get the rocks out of your stream. And so I'm not trying to super simplify it, but I am trying to get you to a point that if you're addicted to something, first of all, you need to realize that God's not judging you. He's not cutting you off. That this gospel of forgiveness and grace and friendship and voice, He's not waiting till you get free so that you can be voiced. He's not waiting so that you're perfect so that He can embrace you and love you and hug you and speak to you and reveal Scripture to you and have relationships with you. All of those things are part of the psychology of a human being. He knows that your guilt has to be removed. Your unforgiveness has to be removed. That everything that you are, all of your weaknesses and all your struggles, that part of the relationship had to be removed, and that's what the crucifixion did. It had to take the life of sin and death. It had to take the recourse of sin and death out of your relationship so that if you mess up, right in the middle of your messing up, He doesn't disfellowship you, because it is the key to your freedom. If you'll realize that and not be guilted into it, not let the enemy in the world and all these other people say you're a dirty dog and you're no good and you're not going to be worth it and you're not worthy, you can just go to the Lord and say, I know that I messed up and I know that you love me and I know that the only way that I can be free is to accept your love. And that you then you can start doing that for other people. The people in your life, whether they're family members and they've disappointed you, or spouses and they've upset you or hurt you, or your bosses, or anybody who you see addicted to anger or pornography or drugs, continue to offer them an open door. I'm not saying let a drug addict come into your house and tear your house apart and steal all your stuff. I'm saying, look, I want to help you. I want to embrace you. I want to be your friend. I'm not condemning you. There are consequences for certain types of behavior, but I am not going to condemn you. If you're going to act a certain way and you're in trouble, we're going to make sure that I protect my family from your behavior, but I want to hang out with you and spend time with you and love you and embrace you, and I'm not condemning you. We are all human beings struggling in the same place. We're all addicted to our comfort, our ease, and our flesh. And so, I wanted to kind of bring in that concept of what I understand about human engagement and addiction, because I was addicted. My whole family was addicted to many, many things. Addiction was a huge discouragement, a huge block. And it's so easy to help people get free with the power of love, grace, and forgiveness. And so, I got a lot of stuff that I'd love to tell you. It's been a couple weeks since we hung out together, but I really wanted to establish that through bond and purpose, we get free. Through bond, us and the Lord, us and our fellow brothers who are warriors in arms, we in that bond and a purpose together, those two things are crucial to seeing people get free. And I don't care if it's a little sin in your life, whether it's one of the little foxes or it's just some big, massive thing that you continue to do over and over again. It's through a bond with the Lord, a bond with each other, a bond with the truth, and not letting condemnation and guilt get in the way. Because if we continue to allow that bond to not be there, we continue to allow purpose to not enter into our life because of guilt or shame or disfellowship, if we continue to allow that, we will live forever in our addiction. We will live until the very end of our life and not be free. And that's not what He died for. That's not the purpose of this life. We want freedom for ourselves first, and then for as many people as we possibly can. So remember that. When you start hearing people that are condemning other people, help them. Tell them, look, you're never going to get people free with condemnation. You're not going to get them free with excluding them from your life. Teach people to love other people. Now, maybe sometime we'll talk about some of the nuances. Love doesn't mean acceptance. Love doesn't mean that you accept everybody and you tolerate that whole everybody gets a hug kind of thing. It's not about everybody's sin and wickedness is considered righteousness and truth or beauty or one. It's not because they like it or because they love it that we're going to also like it or love it. That there are definitely standards, and you need to let people know that I'm going to love you through your weakness. I'm going to love you through your sin, but we're still going to call it sin. We're still going to call it darkness. But I'm not going to condemn you. I want to be your friend. I want to fellowship with you. So for those of you that are struggling in any single area alone at all, you realize that you can be free if you just accept the freedom, accept the fellowship, accept the fellowship and presence of the Lord, accept the Spirit of God to help you, guide you, and teach you and lead you into all truth, and He'll lead you into righteousness. He'll lead you into freedom. But you have to let Him do it. You can't, if you're going to do that, if you, as a human being, are able to forgive someone else, how much more will the Lord be willing to forgive you? How much more is He able to forgive you 70 times 7 every single day that you mess up? Accept that forgiveness, because it's the only way to get free. So I hope that helped some of you guys. Hope it helped you in helping other people. Hope it helped you get free. I'm going to stop the broadcast right now, and for those of you who stayed on or who are here with the live event, we can ask Q&A.